If you're a high performer, there's a good chance you've automated parts of your business, your finances, and your schedule. But what about your meals? One of the biggest drains on your time, your energy, and your mental bandwidth is answering the same question multiple times a day. What's for breakfast? What's for lunch? And what's for dinner? And if you have small people that are asking you these things, you can multiply this, in my case, by four. So, today we're talking about how to put your meals on autopilot so that you can stop making so many food decisions every day and every week and still eat in a way that supports your health goals. Welcome to Wellness for High Performers, where ambitious people discover the path to sustainable wellness that actually feels good so they can build the dream without burning out. I'm your host, Erica Jones. I'm a wellness strategist and entrepreneur, and I help high performers create massive momentum by weaving wellness into their daily life. Hey, and welcome to Wellness for High Performers. I'm your host, Erica Jones here, and I'm super excited about this episode today because I think it's going to be really practical for you. I'm excited about this particular episode because if you find that mealtime always feels like stress time, or you find yourself constantly opening your meal delivery app because it's 6:30 in the evening and you don't have a plan, this episode is going to be very helpful for you today because I'm talking about the strategies and systems for getting your meals and nutrition on autopilot. And this is something that I really feel like I have learned a lot about and perfected over the years. We are a family of six. So this is no small feat in my household, figuring out what to feed everybody for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and making sure that people are happy with the choices and that the choices are healthy as well. So, one of the things I want you to think about before we dive into the tips and strategies is just think about how much time are you spending during your day or during your week thinking about food and what's for dinner or what's for the next meal. People often fall into one of two extremes. There's a person who is constantly thinking about food because they don't have a plan. So every time they finish a meal, they have to think about, well, what's the next meal going to be? And especially if you're like me, you have a family to feed. Sometimes your kids can be hardly finished with lunch before they're asking, what's for dinner? Mine do this all the time. They're big foodies, though. We are a big foodie family. So that could be why they're just looking forward to what the next meal is. But if you don't have a plan, that is a constant mental drag of every time you finish a meal, you've got to be thinking about what are we going to have for the next meal. Now, the other extreme is the person who is never thinking about food. So they typically end up ordering on that meal delivery app. They open DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever is popular these days because it's dinner time. They don't have a plan. They got to get something on the table ASAP. But both of these extremes create a lot of stress. Feeding yourself and your family, if you have one, is one of the most important parts of the day. It's a regular decision that you get to make for your health and your well being. And is it mundane sometimes? Yes, but it's still important. So you want to be thoughtful. You want to be intentional. You want to be planning around what you eat, especially if your aspiration is to be healthy or to raise a healthy family. And if you don't have a system is essentially just an organized process. This whole business of planning your meals, eating with intention, that's going to feel really hard, if not impossible. So the goal is for wellness to feel supportive to your life, not another burden or a hoop for you to have to jump through. That's why in this episode, I want to dive into some of my best strategies for getting your meals on autopilot. So let's start by addressing what I will say is this first cluster of tips, and they are all around reducing decision fatigue. Because as a high performer, you are absolutely making decisions all throughout the day. You're problem solving, you're thinking through big issues, and you're making a lot of decisions. And so the last thing that you want to do is when it's time to nourish yourself, to actually feed yourself from all of that energy that you've put out there, is to have to sit down and make another decision about what you're going to eat. So, this first group of tips is going to be all about reducing decision fatigue. And the first tip I have for you is that sometimes boring is better. Mornings and lunchtime for us in our house are really busy. In the morning, we're trying to be as efficient as possible so that we can homeschool. During lunchtime, I need the meal option to definitely be on autopilot because after lunch, I am transitioning to my office to work for the last half of the day. And this is why we tend to rotate through these same breakfasts and lunches on a regular basis. So in the morning, we'll do some variation of eggs with fruit and toast or yogurt bowls or protein smoothies. And lunch is very much the same. I rotate through about the same 7 to 8 meals for lunch rather than reinventing the wheel every week. And this is really important for my sanity. And so I've just let go of this idea that every meal needs to be some kind of culinary adventure when it comes to the practicality of what I need to get done in the week. This boring is better rule makes things efficient. And that's exactly what I need. The second tip that's going to help you to reduce that decision fatigue is to build a repertoire of recipes. This does not have to be some massive selection. You don't need a cookbook's worth of meals. 8 to 10 recipes will get you started. But what you want is you want to have some meals that you love that are easy to make on weeknights that you can rotate through a span of about 2 weeks. Use your slow cooker, use your instant pot, or whatever makes meal prep and cooking easiest for you. But when you have that repertoire of recipes, then you've got some options that you can just, like I said, rotate through week after week. And so you're not having to think of what is for dinner every single night. Another thing you can do is try theme nights. So some people love doing like the Taco Tuesday or the Soup Saturday. You get the picture. You've heard of this before. This reduces decision fatigue hugely because it simplifies the type of meal you're making on any given day of the week. I actually resisted this idea a lot before trying it because I love food. As I've said, we're a foodie family. And I was like, well, what if it's Taco Tuesday and I don't want tacos? Well, you can always switch it up. You can change what you're making for a different day. So, for example, let's say it's Tuesday and it's cold and raining outside, and it just feels more like a cozy, hearty soup kind of day. But soup is set for Saturdays. You can totally switch it up. So, don't feel like you're stuck just because you have a plan. And that brings me to number four, which is to have a plan. This helps you to avoid that question of what's for dinner. And you can make your meal plan however you like, but it doesn't have to be extravagant. I think that when I was first embarking on this journey of prepping and planning ahead, I thought that this had to be some huge deal. Like I was going to have to reserve hours on a Saturday and prep a bunch of food and ingredients and all this. And I did not want to do that. So you can do this in a way that aligns for you. Some people like to use a meal planning app. I personally found that to be too labor intensive because I had to put in all of the recipe ingredients into the app, which I just didn't want to sit down and do. So for the longest time, I just made my meal plans and a note on my phone. And it would literally be on Monday, we're having spaghetti for dinner. On Wednesday, we are going to have tacos for dinner, that kind of a thing. So it wasn't like some elaborate, labor intensive plan. It was just a foresight, a thought in advance of this is what we're doing for dinner. And after doing this week after week for well over a year, I kind of was like, well, what am I doing? Why am I not reusing these templates that I'm making every single week instead of creating brand new ones? And it was a little bit of a time investment. But what I did was I sat down and I created meal templates for each month. So if I knew, okay, I've got this weekly template, I took a week's worth of meals, 2 weeks worth of meals, and I would stack them in a month. So weeks 1 and 3 would be the same, and weeks 2 and 4 would be the same. And I would just rotate those same meal templates throughout the year. So my October template is the same year after year. So you don't have to batch yours out as much as I did, but I'm just saying if you're already putting together a plan, why not find a way to reuse it and just tweak it as needed? This can make your efforts count so that you're not doing the same thing week after week and you feel like my effort, my time is being wasted. The next thing I would recommend is to add variety, but not overwhelm. I love to cook. I love creativity in the kitchen, but sticking to a meal plan to me at first felt kind of like a douse of water on my creativity. But I realized after I was thinking about it that there's a time and a place where I'm in the space to cook creatively versus cooking for practicality. And on weeknights, I'm cooking for practicality. I need the food to be tasty and I need it to be on the table in 30 to 40 minutes, absolute max. weeknights are not the time for me to be experimenting or trying elaborate recipes. I save that for the weekends. So I wanted to share that if you're someone who loves food, you love exploring in the kitchen and planning your meals just feels like, oh, this is just going to be such a limitation on my creative exploration. No, you can still absolutely do all of that. Just do it in a way that aligns with your schedule so it truly feels like a value add instead of something that's going to stress you out. The other thing I recommend is to embrace unconventional breakfasts. So, who says that breakfast has to include eggs or a protein smoothie? Sometimes I don't always have time to make something nutritious for breakfast. So, I'll eat leftovers from dinner the night before or from lunch the day before. And the other week, I had chicken salad for breakfast because I didn't have the time to make something. So, feel free to embrace unconventional food types or meal types if you don't have time. So now I'm going to shift into building a kitchen that supports you. So you want to make sure that you have tools in your kitchen that work well and that you like to use. So I remember one year we were traveling for vacation. We booked an Airbnb, and in the house that we were renting, they had this blender that was it was like Hamilton Beach or an Oster blender. I can't remember what brand it was, but the blades in it were so dull that we had bought ingredients to make protein smoothies in the morning, but the blades in the blender were so dull. I want to say it took us 20 minutes or more just to blend the smoothie because we had to keep stopping the blender and scraping the smoothie ingredients and kind of mixing them by hand. And then we start the blender again. And we're trying different settings. They had like a crushed ice setting that would kind of work a little bit better than the smoothie blending setting. It was a hot mess. So if I thought to myself, if I had to use this kind of blender every day in my kitchen, I probably would never make smoothies. So if you have kitchen tools like that where you're just like, I can't use this without wanting to swear and punch a hole through the wall, then that's a sign that you need to replace that gadget. Because sometimes the reason why we don't want to step into the kitchen, we don't want to make the effort is because the tools that we have are making it feel like drudgery. They're making the process really hard or unenjoyable. So think about things like that. If you have a dull vegetable peeler, toss it, get a new one. Sometimes annoying things like that are fast and easy to fix and just make the overall experience in the kitchen that much better. So, another thing in the line of building a kitchen that supports you is to know your staples. So, once you have that recipe repertoire, that batch of recipes that you like, take note of the ingredients. What staples can you have readily available in your kitchen? For me, I know that I use a lot of pasta sauce, bone broth, sauces, aromatics like garlic, onion, celery, ginger. I use a lot of different spices, so I make sure to keep those things on hand. Proteins like chicken, ground turkey, wild caught salmon. For produce, we tend to use the same things from week to week. I like to have a box of mixed greens, broccoli and carrots, fresh fruits like apples, kiwis, and pears. I know what we eat on a regular basis, so I make sure that I keep these things on hand. And when I do that, I always have plenty of options to choose from. Another thing that can support you in the kitchen is to buy in bulk. So when you're ordering groceries, even if you're delegating it to an assistant or something like that, even the admin of having to do that can be another thing that takes up mental bandwidth. This is why I like to buy in bulk whenever I can. So I'm ordering things once every few months instead of every couple of weeks or every week. So, for example, we use a lot of nuts because we make our own almond and cashew milk. I use a machine to do it. But I order those nuts in bulk because nuts keep fresh for a long time and I get a better price. And it's less mental load to have to be like, okay, I need more nuts in another week. I need more nuts the week after. I need more nuts. You get what I'm saying? I don't have to have that mental load. I order it and then I know, okay, for the next 6 months or whatever, I don't need to restock on nuts. So think about what can you buy in bulk and that will decrease the amount of just work that you're having to do about remembering what to order. The other thing that I use that has been a game changer is grocery delivery apps. This is a massive time saver. I do not enjoy grocery shopping and I have outsourced this entirely. My grocery delivery app allows me to automatically add my perishable staples to cart every single week. So, like I said, if I know we regularly eat kiwi and pears and apples and broccoli and stuff like that, I can just have that auto added to my cart. And if it's already in my cart, I can just take a quick look like, do we need more of that? Do I have it already there in the fridge? Then it's just a matter of deleting it out of the cart versus searching for it and adding it and going through that extra step. So I highly recommend using the features on your grocery delivery app if you're already doing grocery delivery. And if you're not at all, definitely add this because it's a huge help. It's a huge time saver. You can even have an assistant shop your grocery lists on your app for you as well. So that's another time saver. Another thing is to keep a running grocery list that everybody is aware of. And this way, you don't have to remember everything all by yourself when it's time to shop. So we keep a list in our pantry on a dry erase board. And if someone used the last of the ketchup, then they write it on the board. And I know to order some for next time. And this makes everyone responsible and accountable for the household food. Because if someone is asking me, Mom, why didn't you get the ketchup? Or hey, babe, why didn't you get the ketchup? Well, it's because it wasn't on the list. I didn't realize that we were out of it. So this trains everyone to write down what's needed or it won't get shopped. The other thing that I recommend is don't grocery shop for the aspirational version of you. Buy ingredients that you know and that you're using right now. The food that you can pull together into a meal in 30 minutes on a busy Tuesday. Like, don't buy that spaghetti squash or that kale and then watch it rot in your pantry or in your fridge because you're like, oh, I really want to use kale or I really want to use this spaghetti squash. And then it just ends up rotting. I went through this phase where I really was into like the raw food eating and I wanted to incorporate that a lot more. And so I would find sprouts in the grocery store, like literal sprouts. You may have seen them before. They kind of look like seedlings. They're sold in bags and you can add them to fresh salads and stuff. You can really add them to almost anything. But because I just wasn't used to cooking and eating with that kind of food, I just never ended up using it, and so it would just sit in my fridge and rot. It was like this aspirational version of me that wanted the digestive enzymes from these sprouts and, I'd read about it in some raw food cookbook and, "Oh, it's so good for you," but I never used it, and so instead of continuing to waste 5 to $7 on packs of sprouts every week, I was just like, "This is just not aligning for me. I'm not gonna keep ordering this," and so I stopped. So don't grocery shop for the aspirational version of you. Shop for the practical version of you that's going to use what you actually buy and put into the cart. Okay. So I hope this was really helpful for you, that something inside of these tips felt really supportive or like low hanging fruit that you can actually take and use right now. But this is definitely not the end of what I have to offer on this topic. I think it's so important. And as a mom of four, obviously prioritizing health and wellness for my lifestyle, I've learned a lot over the years. So there will be a part two of this and kind of making your meals and your food automatic for your health, for your wellness. There's a part two of this coming. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that this has helped you or inspired you in some way. And I will be back with the part two of this episode next week. Thanks so much. For deeper conversations like this, join me at elevays.com. That's ELEV as in victory, AYS.com. And get on the list for my weekly newsletter. It's called The Elite Edge. It's where I share insights you won't find anywhere else. I'll see you in the next episode. But until then, make time for what matters.